Tell me what the hell are you scared of when in the end the only
Where's the love? Right here on this podcast. Welcome to Love Drops, where your hosts and One Love ambassadors, Charles and Diane, will share love, hope, and inspirational topics taken from their journey and world events. We will also include on location recordings and special pop up guests from cool places all around the world. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the show.
whether big or small, love never fails. Oh, love it conquers all. Love never fails.
Welcome to Love Drop Podcast. We are so excited for this guest on today. We met him while eating at one of our favorite establishments here in the Low Country. It's actually Acme Low Country Kitchen that's on the Isle of Palms, one of our favorite places. We were there celebrating my birthday, and who was sitting next to us? This incredible guest. And we started a really wonderful conversation, and it led into more conversations. And we knew right away that we wanted to bring him here on the Love Drop podcast because his story of resilience is just one that needed to be shared. So without further ado, Charles, can you introduce our guest to the listeners, please?
Thank you, Diane. Our guest today is Charles Wright. He'll talk with us about the power of resilience. Charles is the founder and CEO of a property management app company, Accountable LLC, that launched in 2025. He currently manages and runs Network Laser, an office business company that he founded over 30 years ago. Additionally, Charles is a property management subcontractor for a 78-acre shopping center in Mount Pleasant. And with that said, I'll turn the mic over to you, Charles.
My name's Charles Wright. I live here in Mount Pleasant, South Carolina. Originally from Columbia, South Carolina. I grew up outside of Columbia, South Carolina on a little small farm. But I'm excited to be here with you guys and share a little bit about my story and what got me to this point in life with all the things that is taking place in my life at the moment. So
Thank you, Charles. We are so excited to have you. And just in talking with you from the start, resilience just kept popping up in both of our heads, Charles and mine. And so, how about we give the listeners a little backstory on how your resilience pushed you through life?
yeah, I'm excited about sharing this. So like I said, I grew up in a little small town out in the rural area, actually on a pig farm. But anyway, when I was in the second grade, just like any kid, you do things, crazy things. So I had a little piece of eraser and from a pencil, and I stuck it in my ear, my right ear, and I couldn't get it. So I got very scared, and I went up to my teacher and said, "Hey, listen, this thing is in my ear. I stuck it in there." And she looked in my ear and she said she couldn't see it. So you kind of like, okay. I went home and with my parents, I go like, "Hey, listen, this object is, I stuck this thing in my ear." And they looked in there and they couldn't see it. So after complaining for a couple of days, finally they took me to a doctor. And the doctor, back then, those doctors, this was back in the 60s. So, the doctors in the rural area, they just kind of took care of a couple of towns, but he looked in my ear and he said, well, he'll be fine. He didn't see it neither. So I'm a kid and I got this eraser in my ear and nobody believed me. But I stayed back that year. I just stopped. I stopped talking. I stopped speaking to people. I just was quiet. It's like a muffling sound. You put your hand over your ear and everything sounds very muffled. So after realizing my sister was 1 year behind me, but she caught up with me because I stayed back that year. But I was determined not to let her pass me. So I came up with my own ways of learning. So what I would do every night, I would go home. If I know I had a test on chapter 1, 2, and 3, in my textbook, I will go home and I will copy, just get on the floor and I'll copy paragraph after paragraph and I'll memorize what words look like. I couldn't pronounce them. And I would take tests that way. When I get a test, or a multiple choice test or fill in the blank tests, I'll memorize in that paragraph that word and try to fill that word out, which is the most difficult way, and put that word in there to make it flow through what I can memorize, what I see. With that said, sometimes I would pass tests, a lot of time I didn't. After years of doing this, I came up with really bad stomach aches. I was so just nervous and stressed and all that. And of course, growing up, I worked hard on the farm, so it taught me how to work. I mean, I focused more on just working. But as a kid, I wanted to learn, but I just couldn't. Like I say, I did this forever and ever. And finally, my stomach got so bad, I spent a lot of time in bed just in pain. After years and going through and passing, I never stayed back again. But my senior year, as a matter of fact, how I got my driver's license, I rewrote the handbook like 50 times. I flunked the test probably about 5 times and I finally passed it because I memorized the
Wow.
book. I memorized the book. I would copy it over and over again until I memorized it. So when I took the test, it was a multiple choice test, so I finally passed it. But after doing that, in my senior year, my stomach was bothering me so bad. I went to the doctor for my stomach. There was a new clinic in the area. It was this female doctor. She was checking me, and I shared with her. I said, when I was in the second grade, I stuck this object in my ear, and I've had problems ever since. And so she looked in my ear and she took this little water gun thing and she put it in my ear and out came an eraser in about 3 pieces.
Wow.
Cool thing about the story, it stayed in the canal of my ear for 10 years, and it never got to the eardrum. So when I walked outside, I could hear the leaves on the trees and the wind. And I just thank God, I couldn't believe it. So
Wow.
right after that, just like anything, I was very hard on myself, very low self-esteem. So it was very tough. Spent a lot of time to myself. But I think I put all that energy in. I was always doing a project around the house. If I wasn't building a picnic bench, I did some crazy things as a kid. I was just not one of these unusual kids. I actually bought my first piece of property at 15. I tell you how weird I was. I worked hard and I saved my money and I would do great things. I helped my parents out. So, and I was a homebody. I didn't go out much with other kids. So, but I
Wow.
got a race to contribute to pushing me to do other things because I couldn't read.
Wow. Throughout it all, I'm envisioning you taking every experience and turning it into opportunities.
Now, I
Wow.
need to circle back though, Charles, because you said you couldn't read. And so we know that that's not the case now. So, where in your journey did you circle back and learn to read?
I was still living at home because I was a homebody, but I worked, had different jobs. But dad died when I was 24, so that's when it was time to leave. I was 24 years old, and I said, okay, it's time to move. I need to get out on my own. So what happened was I finally moved away to the city, and I ended up meeting a young guy in the grocery store, and we just became friends. He's about my age, and so he invited me to church. I was like, well, first thing he did, he invited me. He said, you know anything about the Bible? I said, nope. He said, well, he started reading the book of John to me. And when he started reading the book of John to me, I was like, is this stuff really real? you know? And then what happened was after that, I said, if it's real, I need to do something about my reading. So long story short, I ended up at a church and I had a Sunday school teacher and she was an English professor. And I shared with her, I can read. And so she started working with me some on my reading. She tutored me some. And then I started hiring my own tutors. And that's how my reading got better. I just took off after years and years. I started doing my own self-studies and all that. And I was one of these person where no matter what I did, if I worked in a restaurant, which I did for years, I always started to the bottom. I worked my way up to a waiter working private parties. I worked in a warehouse as a paper delivery guy, as a business machine company, copier, worked my way all the way up to a technician, in-house trained. And I was memorizing words and all that and learning at the same time to get my reading better. So this took years, you know.
Wow.
There's a lot of different things happening in there. the company would send me to be certified to work on equipment, I would study like crazy and memorize, and with all that mixed in to get me through the tests. One thing about it, I was always good with my hands. So you put anything in front of me, I took it apart, a machine, a printer, a copier, I could put it back together. I could take some apart and I could put it back together. And eventually, as years went by, my reading just got better and better and better. It's amazing how, when you continue to stick with something a lot, it got better. So that's kind of how my reading. When I was 34, I started Network Laser. But not only that, I got accepted in to study college. I went back to college. I studied biomed. And I had to take medical terminology and all those tough things. And I memorized everything, the skeleton. I would make copies. I memorized the words. I learned, and that's how I got through certified. It was a 2-year program, but it took me 3 years to finish, but I finished and I graduated.
That's the thing, but you finished, Charles. And that is what I'm hearing threaded through your story over and over again, that you finished. I mean, your story is a true example of the power of resilience, right? And what it sounds like to me, Charles, is that you were gifted with a photogenic memory. People have a memory where they can just retain and they can memorize. That's a gift. So even though you were having problems hearing, even though you were having problems reading, all the obstacles that could have just stumped you, that have stumped people, you hopped over every single obstacle. You made up in your mind that you were going to go. And even the story with your sister shows that perseverance, because you set back 1 year, but because you decided to. You're like, you just kind of chilled that year. You processed. You made it through school, not even able to read, but with a photogenic memory and a persistence to be resilient to get through. I want to jump to where you are in life right now, but I think Charles wants to jump in.
Yes, I just wanted to say that everything that would have hit the majority of people as an obstacle, you turn it into opportunities and never complain. Just say, oh, here's another opportunity, not a problem, not an obstacle, but forward movement through experience turned into opportunities. It's just phenomenal.
Yes. And now you have your own company. You're CEO of your own company. Who thought a little Black boy who had an eraser stuck in his ear, couldn't hear, couldn't read, stayed back a grade, at 15, bought a plot of land, just building your portfolio up. And now the CEO of your own company. Tell us about it.
I'm convinced that you can do anything you want to do. My thing is, it may take me longer to get there, but I can get there. I'm going back to that race. If that race probably had never happened, I probably wouldn't be where I'm at today. I don't know where I'd be at, but I think it proved to me that we don't realize, just to be able to have life and to be a part of this whole big picture. I always look at it, that how blessed we are. I can do like many, just sit around and complain. My thing is, no, I'm going to go out and do something and make it happen. Now, I think sometimes when you make that decision, you may not get the support you want and all that. What I always did was I learned to use the negative as a positive. And now I got a saying, I love my haters, bring it on. That just make me work harder and push harder. Obviously, I must be doing something right. But another thing I learned that is giving back. I've decided to really help others, no matter who walk of life, that who maybe feel like they maybe had something happen in their life or maybe just didn't have a good start or whatever, to give back and let them know, and by encouraging them and building them up and pushing them out to say, hey, you can do it. Ain't nothing special about me. I did it with an erase in my ear. So, but even with the property management app, I'm so excited to be a part of all this new technology. And I got a lot of young folks that work with me, and being a part of that, I think it's good to be alive, to be a part of all this technology. I mean, what we can do now is what we're doing right now. It's just so cool. And I'm always excited to see what's next, what's coming next. So where I'm at right now is I really like to see hopefully my life can make a difference to those who come from, no matter what part of the world you come from, how you're brought up. We can't do anything about the hand we dealt when we come into this world, but we can do a lot about where we're going to go at. I always had that kind of attitude. And so that's where I'm at now. Every day I'm so excited. What's next? What will I be doing, if God is willing, another couple of years down the road? And never limit. When I ran, Dad died when he was 46. He died very young. When I turned 46, I ran the first marathon, dedicating it to him. And my first marathon, I thought, it's like, oh my God, it's the hardest thing I've done in my life. And but after running the second and third, and I said, oh, I'm going to run every state in the country. And some people go like, what? Are you serious? You're crazy. When I got to 25 states, I go like, oh my God, I'm tired of running. This is a lot. But I realized right then, I'm not a runner. I just said, you know what, I'm going to do it. And I just started running. For 1 year, I ran 10 marathons in that 1 year. I was traveling every 2 months running marathons. I spent $10,000 running marathons that year, just traveling. But I had a blast. I met so many wonderful people. I've been in 29 states in this country running, and I can tell you, we don't realize how blessed we are to have what we have here. So just that in itself, and doing that, proving to anybody, no matter where you come from, we didn't have tons of money or anything, but you can make some of your life and you can go for it.
Yes, that is so amazing. And I love the name of your company, Accountable. Accountable. That just so parallels with your life because you continuously held yourself accountable. And as a result, you are now the CEO of Accountable, right? So where did that name come from?
I worked with young men, kind of sort of mentored. We should call my group hold them accountable, and it's called Accountable, the group. So that's kind of where the name came from. I would get about 4 or 5 guys, and we would meet, and we would just have conversation on just basic stuff like how to go out and communicate with people. If they had problems at work, we'd talk about their jobs and how to communicate, or how to be better if they wanted to grow in their company and they just wanted to be better at what they do, or if they wanted to start their own business. So the whole thing is to hold themselves accountable and hold the people accountable, hold somebody accountable, in a positive way, to make sure they hold firm to their integrity and their morals, and making things happen. So that's kind of where the name Accountable. So when I decided this business app to run different commercial properties, the whole thing is to hold all these people accountable, the tenants, the contractors, and all that. So that's kind of to make sure they do their job, and all that. So that's kind of where the name came from.
That is beautiful. And again, taking any obstacle and turning it into opportunity. And then working with young folks. Wow. I'd look at that as a challenge within itself. But what you're doing with it is just phenomenal.
Mhm.
More people need to hear about that.
Yes, and your give back. That's what we picked up on as well. Just your give back, even giving the opportunity of the young people in your company a platform to shine and shine with you, along with you, and giving you the opportunity to learn and to kind of come up in technology as well. So, as we are pivoting around towards the end here, can you tell us a little bit about Accountable app?
Sure. Accountable, when I took over this shopping center, the one I run now as a subcontractor, I was kind of thrown into it. So I needed to come up with something to help me keep track of everything. It's a lot of moving parts. You imagine a shopping center set on that 70 some acres, and I got about 50 something retailers or more out there that I have to deal with. So I needed something to come up with where I could schedule things and, keep track of inspections and all that. One of the young men that I mentor, which own his own company now, he helped me build this app for me. Actually, he built some websites for my other company. So I called Ethan. I was like, Ethan, I need you to give me something to build to keep track of all this. What we thought was going to be just a spreadsheet. Actually, after 2 years and a half of putting it together, I would wake up at night and say, oh, I needed to do this. And I'll scratch it on a piece of paper. And I'll call Ethan up and say, we need to make it work to do this. And we came up with Accountable. So Accountable is a mobile app that I actually run the shopping center from my cell phone. and I can keep track of everything going on a daily basis, all the way down to inspections, to complaints, to if I need contractors to come in to give me quotes and bids on certain jobs, such as maybe putting a sidewalk on or putting a roof on a building. That's what I do. I can keep track of all this on my phone, everything on an app.
Wow.
That is truly phenomenal. You would have thought that you needed a major mastermind computer about the size of a house to keep all of that going, and you're doing it on your phone.
Wow.
That is phenomenal.
That is. And so your team, because we know that it takes a village. So with the Accountable App LLC, how many team members, how many people do you have supporting you?
I got about 5 young people, and they do from trying to resell it to marketing and all that and development. So yeah, I got a pretty neat team, very diversible team, all walks of life, young people, great young people and smart. So I'm very, very fortunate, very blessed to have these young people on my team.
Yes. And you said something there. First, you have youth, so they're coming up. So as you're pouring into them, they're pouring into you. You said they're smart, and that is always a good thing to have smart people around you. Honestly, I don't want to be the smartest person in the room. I want to be in a room of just geniuses to expand and stretch my mind. Because when you're the smartest person in the room, then it's like everything's leaning on you. But if you're in a room of smart people, then that allows that creativity to ebb and flow and stretch and just reach endless possibilities, right? So that's awesome. That's really awesome. What is your goal with Accountable App LLC? What is your goal? What do you want to see this app do in the world?
I think the hardest thing now, a lot of these companies have a problem with is finding good quality people to be there, to be a part of their team. This app here will help track and keep even their employees accountable. They can monitor and watch and see all this. I would like to see it to be able to use in different companies where they can continue to grow. I'm a big time believer in the small business. I think that the small business play a huge role with making this country what it is. So I would like Accountable, hopefully, to see, hopefully many small companies be able to use this as a tool to help them with their companies. Running the shopping center Accountable have definitely saved me a lot of time and really opened me up to do other projects and stuff in many other areas in the community. So that's what I'm looking at. I'm hoping that it can spread. And now with everything being global, who knows, it could probably go across the world somewhere. So
Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely. And I did notice on your team, because I checked out the website, that you have a marketing person. And so I don't see where there's any limits, especially with you, Charles, right? Because you just don't subscribe to limits. You allow the sky to be your limit. You don't let things come in and just stop you. You look to see how you can work around and how can you create something to make it better, to make it flow. And that's a beautiful thing. So, with that said, I wanted to know if you could leave our audience with a love drop. Maybe someone out there is trying to do something new, or, maybe they're dyslexic. Maybe they have a business idea. Maybe they can't read. They just have challenges. Can you speak to our audience that may be facing obstacles or challenges? What love drop of inspiration can you say to that person right now?
I always thought about a diver. I can't remember her name. She was paralyzed, and she was paralyzed from her waist down, but she went on and she wrote songs, she wrote books, she started a company. And I remember I used to always thought about her, and I was like, wow. And I've heard of many other people with many disabilities that have done amazing things. And my thing is that eraser, yeah, it affected me, but I'm convinced now, if you really, really want something, it will happen. I always say, if you want it bad enough, it will happen. Oh, how bad do you want it? Is always I ask the question to myself. So regardless of whatever hand you dealt with in life, you can always make something wonderful and beautiful out of it if you just go for it. So that's kind of hopefully my example of life can be that for anybody else who's out there feeling like they can't get anywhere. I started Network Laser years ago with probably less than $500. And I slept on the floor for a year and a half to get it off the ground. So I'm convinced those are some of the best days, just being in that position, realizing that, wow, if you can live and survive that, you can continue to grow and become anything. Never give up, I guess is what I want to say. Never give up, fight to the end, and just keep pushing. I always say when I run a marathon, a lot of time, the last 3 or 4 miles is always the most difficult. But what I usually do is I find somebody who is in worse shape than me, and I go to that person, I introduce myself and say, hey, listen, my name's Charles, what's your name? We're going to finish together. The cool thing about there's always other people that it's not all about me, that I can find somebody say, hey, we're going to finish together. So the whole thing is when you get there, remember, you're finishing together, you're taking somebody with you, and we cross the finish line together. So.
Ooh. That's amazing. And that is so amazing. And I always say we shine brighter together. And I say it takes a village. So just that right there is exactly a cool example of that. Charles, we want to thank you for just joining us today. Thank you for your time. It's non-refundable. Charles and I are so excited to continue conversations with you. We are global One Love ambassadors, so we will definitely speak accountable to everyone we come across in whatever part of the world that we are in. And it's a beautiful thing to just watch you just glow and just be successful because you had the resilience and you had the determination to keep going and to just do it.
I do want to say something to you guys. You just don't know. It is an honor to meet you guys. I've been talking about you probably to everybody I see. I just think you guys are amazing. What's the odd me meeting you guys, your table next to mine, and that's just, but I thank so much of you guys and what you're doing in your lives, and you just don't know how this is. I'm really telling especially everybody black about you guys. But yeah, I'm blown away with you guys. So thank you so much. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to share it and your patience with me and everything. So I was sitting there going like, okay, nobody's around. Why am I so nervous about doing all this? That's amazing because I've never done this before. So thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
And thank you for you. When we met you, that was not an accident. It was already blessed with a divine blessing. It was supposed to happen, and it did.
And it did.
Yeah.
So thank you. Also, thank you for, just trusting us enough to come on and speak to our listeners. I believe the best is yet to come for you. And like I said, we appreciate your time. And for our listeners, we are putting his company and website in the show notes. So do check him out and see all the wonderful things he's doing out here in the world and support him. And if this episode resonated, please share it with everyone you know. And if you haven't subscribe to the Love Drop Podcast and share it with others. And until next time, Charles and I sign off with One Love.
Never a second will I waste. Never an opportunity to taste the sweetness of this life.
Thank you for tuning in to the Love Drops Podcast. Be sure to follow this podcast and share the love with everyone you know. Until next time, this is Charles and Diane signing off. One love.
Love it conquers all, whether big or small. Love never fails. Love it conquers all. Love never fails.